Good
evening, my fellow Americans. It's your old friend Bill. I told you I'll be back. I just wanted to let you all know that I'm going to be participating in a very, very important event coming up with Vice President Harris. It's about uplifting women. If you know a thing or two about me, I really like to uplift those ladies in more ways than one. I know this probably doesn't look very good considering my ties to a recently departed individual who had a beautiful island in the middle of nowhere. But I have to say that it's going to be a fantastic opportunity. The Clinton Foundation is not dead, despite what people want you to believe. We're coming back, and we're coming back in a big way. Joe's not going to last very long. I think we can all tell after today's press conference. So Kamala's just getting warmed up, and the Clintons are coming back. That's basically my message. You thought you were going to do away with me. It wasn't going to happen. But before we get started, I don't want you all to be confused about this guy coming on the podcast tonight talking about modern monetary theory, whatever the hell that means. That would require us putting power in the hands of the regular people. And, well, you know how we feel about the regular people. We don't think too highly of them. We kind of like them to be subjugated into believing that they have to work for us all the time. And we want to keep that going. So don't listen to anything that they have to say tonight. It's totally inconsequential to what's really going on. Now, you enjoy that $1,400 check that you may or may not get in the mail if you are on unemployment. That's going to last you for a few more months. And I certainly hope that you enjoy it while you can. And, then you get back to working your dead-end job for not much money and having no health care, having no UBI, having an environment that's going to hell. It's really great, isn't it? But the point is, I want you all to know that the Clinton Foundation is alive and well, and we want you to contribute to our cause. We're kind of desperate for money, and I would really appreciate it if you made an in-kind contribution to our organization. So that's why I was coming on tonight, not because I had an important message to give you guys. I just wanted to say I really, really need more money, and I know you're a bunch of suckers out there who will give it to me because I put on that Clinton charm, and it really works. So if you all could do me a lovely favor before this silly little podcast gets started, make sure you go to the Clinton Foundation, leave a comment, tell them how much you really appreciate what that organization is doing for humankind, and give us some money. That was my spiel. And as far as those accusations about what I may or may not be involved with in my private life, well, just know that there's a term called Arkansided. You may have heard of it. Be careful what you say on social media. We're always watching. Always. Thank you all. God bless America. We'll see you real soon. And without further ado...
No, you should just go share screen.
I'm going to go to the screen. I'll be right back. I'm afraid I don't know how to do this, young lady. I'm really trying here.
So challenged. Move over.
Yeah, bye.
Move over. Okay. I can't believe people actually sat here for that long with this. That was way long.
Yes, it absolutely was.
Thank you for that. That was way, way long. Yeah.
Too long?
It was long.
I just wanted people to get
they got the idea.
They got the idea. Everybody hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. We're ready to rock and roll.
And because now what happens is if you go back to share screen and you just roll that little thing, it'll go to the next slide.
Oh, really?
Yes.
All right. So banners. Where is that hit?
Hello, all. Welcome to our Thursday night Generational Live.
God,
Generational Change live stream.
How many different stories do we have?
We have a lot
today.
There's a lot today.
Oh man, and we got a guest coming on in 10 minutes, so we don't have a lot of time.
So we'll start. We could start news and then we can finish after.
Somebody said they love your green pants. I wonder if they love your pigtails too. What made you decide to go with pigtails tonight? Where did that come from?
I was feeling it. I don't know.
Oh, wonderful.
You know what? There was a period of time where I would wear my hair like this, and then that cap I have that I love, I would wear that with my hair like this. I did that for a really long time. It's comfortable.
Oh, log on.
I was feeling it. Sorry.
JP will be ready to come on in 10 minutes.
So so we will be speaking with John Paul Mejia from Sunrise Movement Miami.
He's got a very important message to give us tonight.
Okay, so he's coming on to share. And again, I put that out that anybody out there who's doing things that are serving the community that want to use us as a platform to promote, you're always welcome to reach out to us.
1000%.
So there's that. But do you want to start news?
You know, I think
because
because we're kind of limited with time, and I think there's a lot of news topics to cover, which we'll cover after
Steve
comes. I want to do bootlicker.
I know you did. Okay, so all right, hold on a second.
We're going with bootlicker of the week, guys. We're not waiting on this.
He's got.
This one's big because it speaks to a very, very big issue, which we'll obviously address at greater length in the News and the Muse segment after Steve comes on, which, of course, the biggest news story is whether or not the Amazon workers in Bessemer, Alabama are going to form a union. And, of course, as we know, the senator from Vermont is going down there to try to convince the workers that it's time to become a union. And so if any of you caught the segment, again, I don't watch this stuff. I only watch the highlights. But if any of you caught the segment the other night of Jimmy Fallon and John Oliver on is it the Late Show? Is it the Tonight Show?
You, I saw it after the fact. I don't know what it is anymore. I haven't watched that nonsense since David Letterman retired.
Well, unfortunately, Jimmy Fallon had on John Oliver, and John Oliver, to his credit, he is definitely in the establishment. But again, he is not he's not an American.
But he definitely feels a certain amount of leeway that our nationals do not have here.
And he really does have an appreciation for what it means to have universal health care, universal education, a living wage. So here's a guy who went on Jimmy Fallon's show and said, they were having a joke session about Alexa and what's like an interesting question to ask.
Right.
And so they end up asking the question, Alexa, how bad are the working conditions at Amazon? Was that British accent okay?
Not really, but it's okay. But I get your point.
And so Alexa was in the process of answering this. And when I say that, Jimmy Fallon literally immediately was like, no, cut it. I don't want to hear it. No, can't talk about it. That was quick.
Yeah.
That was really quick. And I am still convinced that it wasn't actually Jimmy. It was a producer in his ear saying, cut the segment.
You know what, though? Here's the thing. If you are somebody that is working for that kind of corporation, you're already a bootlicker because you're really like living in such a way and propping up an establishment that's the problem with
You're already willing.
You've
already compromised so much integrity.
So, he's compromised. He's part of,
in such a way that is unbelievably bad. And the idea,
I'm very pleased with myself, by the way.
Yeah, no, you've done a great job, guys. You got to give Jen a round of applause. She is the graphics coordinator now, so she's doing the work. You got to give it up.
It's looking good.
Yes, no, you're really doing a great job. So Jen is proud of herself, and that's fine.
I am, and that's part of why you need to see the News and Muse, because I think I'll always make sure to put something in that you won't be expecting.
All right, well,
like last week when I did it with
Stephen
Stephen Crowder. Like I put like I have to do little things.
Crowder.
Is that what it is?
Crowder.
Yeah.
But Jimmy Fallon is somebody who, interestingly enough, Joe Rogan just had on Jim Brewer, who was one of my favorite comedians in that late. I always thought there's been like two great times for SNL. There was the late 80s, which was Dana Carvey, Kevin Nealon, Adam Sandler, Chris Rock. There was that Phil Hartman. That was their best period. And then they had another period in the late 90s, which was like...
See, a lot of people would argue that way before that was their best period. And then it all came down to Belushi, Gilda Radner.
Yeah, those... Okay, so three periods.
I mean, are you kidding
me? One in the 70s, one in the 80s, one in the 90s. So in the 90s, they had Jim Brewer, Will Ferrell, Chris Farley. They had these really good comedians, and Jim Brewer was somebody I really liked. And he did the Joe Pesci show, and it was really funny. But he would talk about how difficult it was to work in SNL because of the way that the producers and the writers had were snakes, and they had so much control and things like that. And Jimmy Fallon, who is not nice guy. I actually met him once. He is not the most talented person in the world. I don't think anybody would accuse him of that. He's horrific at keeping a straight face in a lot of shows. But here's a guy who had a goal. He wanted to get to the top, and he is at the top now. And because he's at the top, he is willing, as you said, to sacrifice his principles.
I guess it matters on what you consider being at the top. The top of what? In terms of respectability as a comic, I don't see him anywhere in the top 100. You know what I mean? Like, so when you say at the top of what? Of a corporate network food chain. And
there's always people to go around who are going to be willing to do, the types of things that are considered, well, again, it's anti-worker, it's anti-labor, it's all those things. But for Jimmy Fallon, he's now in a very elite circle of people. So for him, it's of no consequence anymore. Right. But the fact that it was so blatant, and this is a hot button topic, and not only to John Oliver's credit, because John Oliver is having, in my opinion, somewhat of an identity crisis right now. Like, he has a hard time knowing that he's taking all this money from home box office, from these, obviously these very nefarious, campaign contributors to the coffers that is HBO. And at the same time, he knows in his heart that a lot of these things that people are projecting is wrong. He knows that Amazon should allow their workers to unionize. He knows that this country needs universal health care. And shockingly, the other day, Mehdi Hassan was on MSNBC going after Cedric Richmond and basically telling them it makes no financial sense not to have Medicare for all in the United States. And I'm shocked that they let him do it. I mean, he may have gotten a stern talking to after the fact, but nevertheless.
But don't you think that, I think it's sort of like a chicken and an egg thing, because I also think the kind of person that would want to work in such a way where they're basically beholden to, Big Daddy or whatever it is, whatever their sponsors are or whatever, like, that's a certain type of person who would want to live in such a way that that's what they're doing. It's
the one thing that Jimmy.
I don't, and this is why I don't watch any of those shows.
Oh, how could you? I couldn't do it. Once you're awake, there's no way you can watch shows like that.
I think it's just like it's like,
it is. You have to be,
I can't.
That's a good. Hey, Seuss, I'm giving you that one. That's a good one. Great. Well done. And there is no way, that once you know how things are, that you could ever go back to watching that neoliberal drivel.
Well,
there's no way.
It's not even a matter of just buying the narrative, right? It's this entire, like, what the priorities are and what people think is important and what people consider success, and things like watching award shows and reality TV about rich people's personal lives and those kinds of things.
Like, I could never watch.
It's just a sad commentary on where we are.
And again, I couldn't watch the award shows, but I could watch Ricky Gervais going off on them.
Well,
like, that's different.
Yeah, but I just, it's just sad. It's just sad to me that this is what people know more about than things that are really important. So we're trying to change that, but people like this are part of the problem.
Yes, and Jen and I are obviously.
That's an impediment to progress.
Yes, and not only that, but we do have a very big problem being able to get our message out online. This is the message that gets out. Jimmy Fallon's message, CNN's message is to basically ghost important issues. Yeah. So we definitely have to band together to figure out exactly how we are going to deal with this going forward. It's not going to be easy. We have some ideas up our sleeve, but I think with the success that we had with the Assange telethon, it gives us a platform to have some pretty good ideas about how we're going to increase our reach going forward. And like I said, we always have to check our egos at the door. Yeah, but we have some ideas. But anyway, let's bring on an awesome organizer and good friend, John Paul Mejia of Sunrise Movement Miami. We obviously have a lot of big things to talk about, and a lot of people obviously have been frustrated with a lot of the national organizations in terms of the decisions they have been making. But I have to say, and not to butter him up any more than he already gets buttered up by us, he is hands down the best local organizer that I have seen in South Florida, bar none. Yeah. He is the leader of Sunrise Miami. He might as well be ahead of Sunrise South Florida, as far as I'm concerned. All right, let's give the Broward people some props. Well, we're trying to build it right now. Yes. So kudos to Brandon for getting it started. Right, let him tell us. JP Mejia, welcome to Generational Change. How are you, my friend?
Hey, you two. I'm doing very well. I'm actually not in Miami right now, but I will say I am happy that I am being interviewed by you and not Jimmy Fallon or Bill Clinton to start us off.
Where are you?
Right now, I am in West Philly. I'm actually with a couple Sunrisers right now.
Born and raised on the playground where I spend most of my days.
So what's going on? What brings you on? What do you want to talk about? Let's hear your story.
Yeah, I mean, there's loads of stuff going on right now, not only in the climate movement, but we've got new allies, both with our Indigenous partners that have worked so hard in ushering in one of the best nominations we've seen so far with Deb Haaland. We've got new partners in labor. We just recently launched our campaign for a federal jobs guarantee along with Sarah Nelson and Representative Ayanna Pressley. And then locally, we have this burgeoning campaign for a Green New Dade that is sort of shifting the whole system's priority of how our community should invest in the face of the climate crisis, which is really awesome. So I'm down to talk. I'm game to talk about whatever y'all want to. But those are a couple broad strokes.
Yeah.
Is there a website or any place that anyone can go to check out Green New Dade?
There isn't a website yet, but you can make sure that you stay updated with everything going down by following Green New Dade on Instagram.
Okay, so
Perfect.
that's what we're talking about.
It's at Green New Dade on Instagram?
Yep, at Green New Dade. So the account is still starting up, but that's where everything will be.
That's awesome. So I also feel a little bit hopeful as far as climate goes, given some of the picks that are going on. Like I've also thought this is kind of a good thing that's happening here. But in terms of what's going on locally and how people can get involved, of course, that's what we always want to talk about and encourage everybody to get involved. So how long are you going to be in Philly?
I'm gonna be back in Miami towards the end of April, kicking things off for Earth Day. There's a lot of plans that are happening right now with our mayor, Daniela Levine Cava, who you guys have had on. And she's, has her own sort of office campaign called Thrive 305, in which she's opening an avenue for more regular folks to share their thoughts and ideas of how our local government should govern. And we're making sure that we're uniting the largest possible coalition with people locally who are organizing for housing justice, racial justice, and so on, to talk about climate from that whole system's vision, right? So that's a lot of the work that's happening locally right now.
And I also wanted to touch on what you had said, which is something we always talk about, which is the connection of all of this to the labor community, and how that honestly bridging, if we bring together the people that are like essentially the Greens with the people that are the labor people, with the people that are like the progressive people, that's the part, like that's what we need. We need the labor people to sort of be central in it. And talk a little bit about down here, like if you know of any actions, any things that people can get involved in, where they can support labor, justice, climate. I mean, it's all intersected.
Right. No, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's all intersected. So Miami is ground zero for the climate crisis, right? We have rising sea levels, intensifying hurricanes that continue to encroach upon our lands and waters. And the due diligence that lies ahead is not only protecting our people, but also reforming our systems entirely to make sure that they're designed around protecting people and protecting the people in places we love, not profiting off of them. So that has large implications that also bring in our friends in the labor movement, right? So when we talk about investing in public transportation to drive down emissions, what does it also look like to have those investments go towards fulfilling the salaries that our like county employees work? When we're talking about rising heat temperatures, how about we think of those who work outside, or those who rely on the county's underfunded public housing, which actually doesn't require AC units? There's loads of stuff that's going on right here. So the Green New Dade, or through Sunrise Movement, or through many other groups like the MCA, Miami Climate Alliance, you can plug in to the connection of groups that are all aligned for this cause to really push forward on what Miami deserves, not only what we want, but what we deserve and need.
Yeah. And I would like to also give a shout out that we do have a lot of things going on in Broward too. We got to give some love to the 954. We have a new Sunrise group. We've had a few setbacks over the course of, a couple of years with getting it, and the loss of our friend Mitchell Stolberg, who was the original Sunrise Movement hub. And there's been a lot of stuff. So they're getting it up and running again. I sat in on their first meeting, which was really cool. They're planning their big Earth Day thing. And so, yeah, we have to give some love to Broward. It's not all about Miami.
Right.
We all have to suffer in this together. So, that's how it goes.
We can all thrive in it together too.
Right. Survive and thrive.
Yes.
You see, this is why we're friends, because I always say survive and thrive, because that's what we're trying to do. Now, in terms of, how we can continue, to build. I think right now it's after the election. There's a lot of people who are not necessarily enthusiastic about getting involved and things like that. But I do think there are opportunities here for us to build on certain events. I don't know if we've discussed this or not, but we are going to have a beach cleanup that's coming up on not this Tuesday, but the following Tuesday on April the 6th. And I think I posted that in the chat. I think if, the Sunrise Movement wants to join Gen Core for that endeavor, I think we can get a lot of people out. And I think it just becomes sort of a snowball effect. The more people,
Trash and Taco Tuesday.
Well, of course. How could you not like that?
I'll find any excuse to have tacos is really what this comes down to. So
I remember we all the three of us shared tacos one night after that.
So you understand. That's right. And we were like, were we in like Wynwood? Where were we?
We were close.
That was on Biscayne and 63rd.
Okay. Yeah.
That was fun.
All right. So I have a thing about tacos. So the point is, I figure if I like tacos and other people like tacos, we'd clean the beach. We do 90 minutes of beach cleanup and then we have tacos.
I think we just need to find activities that people find, exciting. And then,
just fun and social. And I think that makes, I think it's just, plus we give service hours, whatever. I mean, all of that. But I think it's just any opportunity to engage.
I think what we've learned is that a lot of people really don't want to be consumed with politics 24/7.
Right.
And if there's a way to
service,
break away from that. And it's interesting you brought up Sarah Nelson. We're actually trying to get her to come on the podcast. For somebody who's the head of the CWA, it really doesn't get much better than her. I mean, she is out there and she's so enthusiastic and really believes in workers' rights. I haven't seen somebody like that in such a long time. We need those types of leaders like yourself that are enthusiastic, but in a way that isn't, hyper partisan.
Right.
That isn't
it's not
about,
political.
No.
It's that's why we try to stick with issues.
Yeah, we have a cause. We're trying to work on that. One of the things that I did bring up at the Broward meeting the other day, which I do think would be interesting if this is even something that's been talked about, let's say with Green New Dade, the thing that I think we could do at the local level is a plastic ban. Is that something that's been discussed at all?
Not currently within our hub. However, we know that there are, everyone has a role to play. And when it comes to our movement specifically in Sunrise Movement, we see our responsibility as young people to, in the brand of Sunrise Movement, participate in that political process, right? That's what identifies our group and our DNA. We build people power in order to then build political power. However, there's loads of several groups around Miami that do different things. There's sustainability groups, there's groups that are dedicated to service. And the benefit of having a coalition is that you can delegate tasks and power and constituency to the different places that people want. But what you can all share in common, which is another great part of a coalition, is that, like you said, people don't want to be consumed in politics all the time. But one thing that we cannot escape is our struggles. And by engaging with our community members, by engaging with our neighbors and our loved ones and the people and places we love, we get to talk about our shared struggles as people. You might be oppressed by something, I might be oppressed by something else. You may face a challenge, I might face another. But together, by having those conversations and by creating those spaces, we can create common threads. And when you identify a problem at its fundamental core, you're also able to articulate the scope and scale of the solution that's needed. So that's what these convening spaces and that's what these coalitions are really about. And I'm really glad that Sunrise Broward is now springing up as well, because they seem to be a great ally in this fight.
Yeah, we're always about making connections. I think of it like a spider web, and every time you make another link, it makes it stronger. And it's bringing different groups together. And I totally agree with that. That's what we're trying to do. That's basically our mission.
What can people do to help you continue to build on this movement? In particular, what can people do to help with the concept of the Green New Dade? Yeah,
it really goes across so many levels and what people can do, right? So one thing you can do is just join our hub. So you can go on sunrisemovement.com. There's a little map there. You can search up Miami, and then suddenly you'll be part of our hub. I'll get an email. We can have a one-on-one, and we'll start finding your role. We'll start developing.
And you'll refer Broward people up to Broward, right?
Right. Broward too. I'm
Okay.
speaking from Miami, but I know we got our
like if
Broward
you get some of our people, don't need to steal them. You can
That's
feel
right,
free to
that's
forward
right.
them.
No, we're a coalition. We're
Okay,
together.
I'm just saying. All right.
We
You're
definitely
looking for the Broward people.
Yeah, and there's definitely, obviously, we've talked at length about Ann Eskamani, and hopefully, if she does end up running for governor, that would be great. But there definitely is a very big cluster of progressives that are up in the I-4 corridor between Orlando and Tampa, and so continuing to network with people across the state.
Yeah,
we have to have. I think. Say this all the time. Florida really is ground zero for an economic populist uprising,
as well as climate. That's what John Paul was saying. Like, it's ground zero for climate crisis, but we think that it is also ground zero for a real labor change, push.
And I do think that framing it from the same standpoint of, this is a state that frankly should be powered by solar panels. It really should. And there's so much land, protected land, that we could be utilizing, that the state could be utilizing in order to make it so, instead of us having to worry about, the issues with sea level rise and red tide and blue-green algae and all that. So I do think that the more we continue to build these hubs out, I mean, like I said, you guys are doing a fantastic job in Miami, but we obviously have to figure out how we can coordinate across the entire state. But Green New Dade just works. It's a great marketing concept, a great name, and you're doing an amazing job, man. Anything else that you want to plug, before you head out?
Well, lastly, it's much larger than I am, but you bring up a good point, that we need to build power in our state. Our state is a microcosm for the entire United States. We have every pocket, every sort of person that exists here. And if we're able to model what a fight could look like, what a progressive fight could look like, will suddenly be the emblem of what the progressive movement could be. And the reason we need so much state power is because anywhere from our criminal justice system to the environment, we are facing really big attacks. Right now in the Florida legislature I just said right now twice, 2 bills are being introduced that are called energy preemption bills. And that's a boring name for essentially saying that all the folks who have been bought by utility companies and oil companies, both Democrats and Republicans, are supporting a bill that says municipalities, cities, villages, and so on will not have the right to say what type of energy they will produce, but rather the state, which is, whose officials are bought by oil and utilities, will have that. And that would have immense repercussions on our way out over the next 10 years, which is, we know, that's the scale at which we need to really mobilize out of this. So get involved in whatever way you can. Join your local hub, be it Broward, Miami, or anywhere else in the United States that you're tuning in from. And this fight is real. This fight is now, and we're facing a lot of opposition because we're winning.
I agree.
I think we've been given the blueprint, though. I really do. We got the blueprint in Nevada with what they did to take over their state party.
On the political side, it definitely is like something to look at.
And then obviously, over the next few days, it could be a really big moment for the labor movement if the Bessemer, Alabama, Amazon workers are able to unionize. And obviously, as you know, Sarah Nelson is on the ground there. Bernie Sanders is going down there. Not gonna.
He wants me to go, but we'll talk about it anyway. I don't know about that. I don't know that they. I don't have a that.
If there's a reason, if they need her there, that would be wonderful.
Oh yes, if they need me,
yes,
and
of
only
course.
me.
Who wouldn't? I really do. Whenever I have to say, it's the highest compliment I could pay to you. Whenever we communicate, whenever we're doing something, I get an amazing sense of optimism. I believe that a lot of positive change can happen because when somebody like yourself is helping lead the charge, it's in the right hands.
Yeah.
And we're going to do whatever we can to work synergistically together to make sure that the Green New Day does well, that Sunrise does well, that GenCorp does well. And if we do that, it's going to build out and it's going to be something that's going to be sustainable for a very long time.
Thank you so much for coming on, John Paul.
Thank you so much for convening this space, and I look forward to keep working with you.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, brother. Stay safe and we'll be in touch.
Bye, my friend.
Have a good one, guys.
Do the same. Bye-bye.
Okay, so
needless to say, he's just, an amazing.
Okay, I loved him the first time I saw him. Do you remember?
You just knew.
We were he was 16 years old. He was 16 years old. And they were talking outside of the first debates. Was that what it was?
Yeah.
Where was it? So. No, it was like it was the climate. We did a whole climate thing outside with first debates. And that kid had this megaphone and he was just amazing. And I'm like, we need him. We need to work with him.
But he was not. He's not what you would call an antagonizer. He's not he's a rabble rouser, but in the right way.
Yeah, no, he's a leader.
He brings people in, and that's just. And again, well, this is why he may become the leader. He may become the leader of the Sunrise Movement. It wouldn't surprise me in the least. And the fact that we got him down here, you ain't going anywhere, JP. No. Don't think you're moving anywhere, baby.
No.
So without further ado, we obviously have a very important subject that we have to talk about because, as a lot of you know, the corporate media goes to great lengths to make you think that this 1.9 trillion stimulus package, which, let's face it, there are some good things in there, but it's strictly a Band-Aid on a much larger problem. And so I happen to have read The Deficit Myth by Stephanie Kelton. It's a great book, highly recommend it to everybody. There's a lot of different ways that we could be moving forward economically in this country. And one of those ways, without question, is learning modern monetary theory and how the federal deficit, state deficits, county deficits, local deficits, those are real. But a federal deficit is not.
Okay, go on. Because you're pontificating about the academic stuff, but this is what I want to say. Okay, so our guest, this is the thing, okay? Let the lady talk. So I have known of this next guest, and this is very strange because I feel like it's someone that I know that I feel like I could have a conversation with, but I have known about him I can't even tell you how many years ago, back in the days of like the Sane Progressive. And Steve Grumbine was one of like the first voices that I heard really like that was inspiring that there could be a different way. Like this was before Bernie ran. I mean, this was a long time ago. And so this is kind of like a really cool thing. But anyway, so you want to sit there and talk all blah, 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 blah stimulus. So I'm just saying, yes, we could talk about that and MMT, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But I was just going to say this is really cool. So Steve Grumbine, founder of Real Progress in Action and Modern Monetary Guy. And thank you for coming on after Jordan. Did you have enough time to deal with your kids?
Isn't that funny? Yeah, thank you guys for having me on. I'm so sorry. We were trying to get together back when I had COVID, and COVID was no joke whatsoever. So
I had it. I had it like a month ago, and I'm still kind of like 80%. He had it, but he didn't really he wasn't that symptomatic.
I'm a lucky guy. Yeah. What can I say? But it's
not good.
It's taken people that I've known and people Jen's known. There's a lot of reasons why this was an epidemic of proportions no one's seen in 100 years. And I think a lot of that just has to do in many ways with the system that we have. And I think we should just, go right into it. We have a restrictive economic system in this country by design. That is not the way it needs to be, nor is it the way that it should be. And I think the most important thing, Steve, to really jump into is for people to really understand how the federal deficit really is a myth. When you're a currency issuer, as I believe one of a dozen or so countries around the globe have, we can print money as we need to, and our main concern is keeping up with inflation. So if you can dive right into that in terms of
how we've been being lied to for basically our entire lives.
Not paying attention to that big billboard.
No, just basically that we've been being lied to forever.
I've seen the billboard in New York City where they run the deficit numbers and tell us how terrible we are.
Yeah. So talk about that. Like basically it's a snow job that we've been all living with since the end of the gold standard.
Yes.
Yeah. It's definitely something like that. The bottom line is that anybody can create a currency. Literally, you and I can create a currency. The issue is, can you get it accepted? And in the case of the United States and the UK and Russia and China and Japan and Australia and Canada and really all over the world, any nation that issues its own currency can do this. It's not an American phenomenon. And MMT isn't something you really do either. That's the thing. MMT is a lens for which you can view the entire economy. And so when you look at the way people have laid out the economic battle, you see in particular progressives, well-meaning progressives, typically are asking, how are you going to pay for it? How are you going to, fund this thing? Where's the money coming from? You're taking from Peter to pay Paul, and and the mounting deficits, and it's a moral crisis and so forth. And so for years, I was a Republican, to be honest with you. I was right of Reagan, and all I could think of was, people are ne'er-do-goods. They're not, they're always taking my tax dollars and all the things that you see people talk about constantly. So when the great financial crisis hit back in 2008 and 2009, I lost a 17-year career, and I was like, something's amiss. And I started getting introduced a little bit at a time, spoon-fed, before all the videos and memes and stuff like that. And when I finally realized that basically a country that creates its own currency can spend, period. The issue is not a matter of ever can you afford it. The issue is always, can you resource it? In other words, do you have the real resources to provide Medicare for all? Do you have the real resources to provide student debt relief? Do you have the real resources to provide for a military that has filled the whole globe up full of bombs and tanks and planes and stuff like that? And of course we do. So the issue becomes, why is it always when we come down to talking about progressive change, when we're talking about taking care of people, that we're always hearing about, well, how are you going to pay for it?
Yeah.
And you go back to Hillary, and you can remember her cackling at Bernie the first go round. It's pie in the sky. It's pie in the sky. And so these are the sorts of things that people get reinforced in their head. And so what MMT is, going back to 1972, when Nixon took us off the Bretton Woods Accord, took us out of the gold standard, really.
Yeah.
What we had was a fundamental shift from a gold-backed, commodity-driven, force-redeemable world global gold standard based on the dollar. And when he removed us from that, something happened. The people that had money, the powers that be, the oligarchs, they knew what was going on. And if you look at the income levels, you can see it's like a hockey stick. It just ballooned straight up after Reagan and through Clinton and Obama, you name it. So MMT allows us to see the economy as it is, not as people say it is. And you see the libertarians and you see the other folks out there that believe that we are constrained, that we don't have the money, that we can't do these things. And MMT shows us clearly that not only can we spend on anything that we have resources for, that we can do it as long as we have the votes, as long as we have the political power to make that happen. There's absolutely no financial constraint. There is no such thing as how you're going to pay for it, because every time the federal government spends, it literally spends with keystrokes. It literally wills that money into existence. So the idea of raising taxes to pay for things is anathema. It's not real. It doesn't have any basis in fact. So I think that's really a big thing right there to start with.
I don't know if this question has been asked or not, but it's just been kind of, itching me lately. Is there any point to federal income tax?
Yes, actually there is. So the reason for having a tax in general, you have to go way back to the beginning when kings were issuing sovereign currency, and they would have gold coins with the Caesar's face on it, render under Caesar and stuff like that. And the idea here is that the king wanted to create an aqueduct. They wanted to create a standing army. They wanted to create a road. They wanted to build something, right? A museum, whatever. And so what they would do is they would say, hey, I want to hire somebody for this gold coin. And the people would say, what do I need a gold coin for? I'm fine. I'm out here hunting in the woods. I'm, raising potatoes. I'm having fun with my family. And it's like, you've got a good point there. So how about this? How about I charge you 10 of these gold coins with my face on it to keep your house? The guy's like, oh crap, how do I get those gold coins? He's like, funny you should ask that. Let me show you. I want to build an aqueduct over here, and I'll give you so many of these gold coins. And so the tax is what drives the need for currency. And it's kind of the circuit that keeps our economy going. It doesn't pay for anything. So the tax either can raise the buying power of the dollar, or it can diminish. It depends on aggregate demand. And you can see that in terms of inflation. You raised the point of inflation at the beginning of this thing. And that's really the real constraint. How much inflation do you want to have in the economy? And so taxes serve as a brake or a gas pedal for the economy that drives the currency. We're in a tax-driven economy.
Right. But it doesn't go to our programs and how you don't have to balance it like that. You don't have to have it like that. That's a mythology.
That's correct. In fact, on Twitter, you and I went back and forth for a second, and I just was I put a great article out there by Raul Carrillo and Jesse Meyerson called The Dangerous Myth of the Taxpayer Dollar. And what it is all about really is what do you think of a taxpayer, right? What do you think about you typically think of a white dude. You think about a dude with a suit, the good people, the mom, pa, apple pie, make America great again, all that good stuff, right? And what happens is that people don't understand the difference between states and the federal government. The state of Florida, for example, has to have tax, maybe not income taxes, but they have different taxes to fund the state-based programs. Just like if California wanted to have California healthcare, they would have to fund that literally with taxpayer dollars. But at the federal level, we don't have to pay taxpayer dollars for it. In fact, if you were to do Medicare for all for the whole nation, there's a lot of reason to believe that it would actually be deflationary, because anytime you have economic activity that is brought back into a more efficient state, you have less economic activity. So the chances of those real resources being freed up, it could really create a deflationary condition. So, it's just a matter of trying to understand the difference between states, which have to tax, and the federal government taxes, but for a totally different reason.
Yeah, there's no question that knowledge is power. And this is one of the things that will ultimately change, because corporate special interests is what we harp on more than anything else, is what prevents us from getting where we need to go. And obviously we would love for, the squad, Ro Khanna, Marie Newman, and so on, Katie Porter, we want them obviously to do more than they're currently doing. But I don't think people really understand the scope of being maybe a dozen non-corporate representatives in a sea of 400 plus that are being funded by mega corporations that want you to bbelieve that modern monetary theory is, it's pseudoscience. It's not real. This isn't how it works. Everything is based on, you give one, you take one. And I don't think people really understand the whole concept of the bucket, what that means. And I think understanding that $1 in goes $1 out, this whole idea that we're in a deficit, well, actually, no, it's $1 is taken out of one end and it's put on the other end. And that's sort of the idea behind trade. So if you can explain that better than obviously I can explain it.
Seriously, because I don't know. Just all I heard was like, all I'm thinking of is there's a hole in the bucket.
Yes, I remember that song well.
So just remember, we spend money every single time Congress authorizes spending. We create new money every single time. Not sometimes, we never recycle $1. $1 is spent by the government exactly one time. It never gets respent by the government. Once it's received, it's destroyed. And so really, you could think of the dollar as a tax credit or a tax liability waiting to happen. And there's no debt to that. The deficit is largely, the reason why we say it's a myth is because it's just the difference between the amount we tax and the amount we spend. But if you recognize that the spending and the taxing are not tied together, there's no real relationship there. The tax is there to drive the currency, to manage inflation. It's kind of like an EQ on your stereo. The spending, it's really all about, what do we need? What kind of an economy do we need to make our country okay? What do we need to make people be educated? What kind of investments do we need to make into the people growing up to make sure that our country is good? I look back, I've been studying the Haitian Revolution quite a bit. And one of the things that was very, very clear was they kept the slaves very, very ignorant. They blocked them from any kind of knowledge. They kept them very submissive, and they kept their head down, and they couldn't dream of anything better. Well, we have dumbed our country down right now to be like a modern day slave, where we won't resist. We don't think about the possibilities. We can't fathom anything beyond what these bad economists like Paul Krugman and others have said. So we sit there and we literally think that this is the realm of possibilities. We couldn't possibly write off all student debt. We couldn't possibly have a Green New Deal. We couldn't possibly do any of these great things that we dream of and we've read about, futuristic things. We can absolutely do every single one of them. If you can dream it, if you can resource it, we can afford it.
I want to ask you about something that it's funny, because I was getting ready to come on and I put on Status Quo, and there you are talking with Jordan. And so you said something that was really interesting that I never really thought about. I mean, we support universal basic income. It's something that we support, but not in and of itself. I've always said that's fine as long as it's not a substitute for, jobs or a living wage or healthcare. Like it can be an addition. But you really made this great point about the difference between giving people income either regularly or one time, and what would be more beneficial would be taking away their debt. Yeah. And that was, and it was I obviously I'd love to have student loans forgiven, I still have some. So, it would be nice. But that was really because what are people going to do with this money?
Right.
So would you explain that, like why the cash payment is not the answer to the problem?
Absolutely. So just for grins, I'll use the smoking cigarettes analogy. When you think about it, back when I started smoking cigarettes, they were like, I don't smoke anymore, by the way. But back when I did, they were like $2 a pack. Okay.
Right.
Now they're like $10 a pack or something like that. Okay. So let's say they base your UBI on buying $2 a pack cigarettes. Okay. So you got your $2 UBI, but now all of a sudden the UBI is $10. I mean, the cigarettes are now $10 a pack. Well, you got your UBI. The libertarians would like you to shut up and eat your peas, like Obama said too. Okay. But the fact is that you can't buy your cigarettes anymore. Okay. So what we see is that the subsidization of bad wages is really all you're getting there, because you're really needing something. There's something you want, a basic need you have. And if your UBI does not cover that, there's really not much point. There's not production also to back that up. Remember, inflation is usually brought on by not having the productive capacity to meet the demand. So like you see places where there's not enough, use something silly like PlayStation 5s right now, people that are going crazy for these things. Just using something that people can relate to, okay? But they're out of it. So you look online, you see them selling for $1,200, $1,300, right? Because there's just simply not enough supply to meet demand. And you use that as just sort of like a silly thing, but look at housing in New York City, or look at other places where there's a shortage of housing and there's 1 million people trying to get to it. That's kind of what happens when you give somebody a UBI. Here's $1,000, now go make hay. And you think about it, it's like if you give somebody $1,000, but it costs $1,100 to get healthcare, what have you really done for them? Now they get to go get subsidized by an Uberization of employment. So Ayanna Pressley has the right answer. She's got a federal job guarantee that she's advancing right now with the help of every modern monetary theory person out there, by the way. And the idea is that we could actually expand Social Security. We already have a system in place to provide survivor benefits, to provide retirement benefits. We could expand that to meet other new opportunities for people that maybe can't work. Okay. But the idea of providing a federal job guarantee does a couple things. Number one, you cannot subsidize a bad wage at Walmart when you're working a job guarantee. Why? Because you're already working. So in order for Walmart to hire you out of the job guarantee, they have to actually go ahead and meet or beat the package you got with the federal job guarantee. That is transformational. A UBI to everybody. In other words, universal, unconditional, everybody gets it. That's status quo. Status quo for Jordan. Status quo, though. Okay. So the idea here is that if most of these programs are intended to be what they call counter-cyclical. When the economy goes bad, people roll onto the job guarantee, or they would get their UBI in a different world. But the problem is that when it's just there, general prices rise to meet the available income. So you would always have to keep raising the UBI, which you've seen how effective we've been at raising Social Security, right? Non-existent. So really at the end of the day, what people need is their basic needs met, not just cash. Cash will only buy what's available for the price you got that cash for.
That's right.
Exactly.
So in the one person that can actually afford everything is the federal government. It can't run out of money. So if that's the case, then why put the burden on people to be really good stewards with their $1,000 when the government can just provide them healthcare, when the government can just provide them housing or food? I mean, why in the world will we sit there and say, now go do good things with this $1,000? Now go, be gone with you. It
right.
Just makes sense to
me.
About
and talk about how easy it is for them to do a debt jubilee. And that's something that, right. And I remember you've been talking about this for a few years, at least. Like this is something that, and it's totally doable. And I just don't think people can wrap their heads around it. And that would be the easiest way to help the most people, without doubt.
Absolutely. So way back when Stephanie Kelton and AOC and a few others did a panel on relieving student debt, getting rid of student debt. And really what you realize is that most of the opposition to student debt is not about, free stuff. It's really about, I paid my student
debt. Yes. I got me mine. You do.
Yes. Hey, you can't get it's like, hey, I was a slave before. You can't be free. What the heck, man? Come back down here. No.
Yeah.
And this is what we need to stop doing. We need to start celebrating victories. When I look back at the Bernie campaign and I look at Nevada in particular, and one of the most disgusting things I ever saw happen was the unions fought against Medicare for all because they had gotten good union benefits and they didn't want to see everybody get this. I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you? Why would you even think this way? But this is that dog eat dog capitalist world that we live in, where you literally, if you get an inch above, you're doing so much better, and everybody wants to just destroy you. And you go back a long ways, and you can see clearly that the reason why we are screwed is because they have always provided wedge issues every time we've gotten united, every time we've come close to being able to have collective voice. They give the poor white guy an extra 50 cents to keep him against the black guy. And now all of a sudden we separate once again. And this is going back. I used Bacon's Rebellion with Jordan. I'll use it again. It is one of the epic things where you saw people that were of the lower class uniting, whether it be good or bad reasons, they were uniting. And then all of a sudden they said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to give the poor white guys a little bit extra. And then all of a sudden the entire unity broke apart. That's it. That's the typical wedge issue. So this is why we need to really, really focus on MMT, because you're not going to hate your immigrants because you know that you can afford to house them. You know that you can afford to provide benefits. They're not taking anybody's lunch. They're literally coming here, and we need them. We need people to work, especially to mobilize for a Green New Deal. So a lot of these tropes that we have are, you wouldn't even have these conversations if people truly understood MMT. It'd just be like, oh, is that what we got to do? Do we have the resources? Yes, do it. Just do it.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be having all these conversations.
Yeah, I think that there are definitely times where I recognize that I'm not going to win people over based on the morality argument in terms of how we treat the least of these, right? I mean, you're just not. And so it is really important to have a good economic argument for those people that are not as morally inclined. And so this is a really important part of that. And I mean, you had something you wanted to say?
I do think that there's a lot of people have misconception about the importance of having a federal jobs guarantee and what that means. A lot of, Andrew Yang is the most noted person in terms of the national scope that supported Jen's campaign against Wasserman Schultz, and, learning a lot about what he is fighting for. And I do think he's going to be the next mayor of New York City. I think that there is a mistake that is made constantly by people in the Yang gang and people who support universal basic income to not recognize the value of a federal jobs guarantee and recognize that having that is essential if in fact we're ever able to, we know how DC works, but if we're ever able to get to a point where we could have a green energy jobs focused infrastructure bill, being able to put people to work, there is so much work that needs to be done from an infrastructure standpoint alone. And having the will, if you will, to have people understand why MMT is absolutely necessary, it goes without saying that people just need to really understand it. But unfortunately, in our country, as you know, they have to understand it in basic terms.
Yes.
If it is not something that you could say as something as simple as make America great again, you're not going to convince people to listen to you. And that may not mean much, but if there is a MMT,
people like color wars and logos and slogans and catchphrases, and you can they don't really. We've lost all sense of. I thought about this a lot. We've lost all critical reasoning skills. When you talk to people, there's no reasoning happening. There's a regurgitation of talking points, and it's kind of freaking me out a little bit because, it's very Matrix-like for me in some ways. Like, it's kind of weird. But yeah, there's this complete we're drones. We're drones. And even worse in this country is exponentially bad.
If you play the game of Monopoly, you already know that, if you run out of money, you can just start writing money down on a piece of paper. It's not a big deal. The bank never runs out of money.
Right.
And so the idea of it just being simply you can't run out of inches, you can't run out of pounds. All a dollar is a score. It's all it is. And we can never run out of points. Where do points from a baseball game come from? I don't know. Where do airline miles come from? I don't know. Same place. They're just keystrokes. And so if you think about it, as long as you have enough of these notches on your belt, so to speak, you can buy what you need, you can afford what you want. And so the issue is not whether or not the federal government that has the patent on this, that this is its way of provisioning itself, right? It issues dollars so it can buy things, for itself. It's literally keystrokes, and dollars spent into existence are taxed out of existence. It's a circle. I mean, I don't know how to make it much easier than that. It is a paradigm shift for sure.
It's a fiction. We're living in a fiction, and it's hard for people to understand that. People definitely like the idea of things being tangible, and it's a much more amorphous concept than how people imagine it. They think our government budget works like their household budget, and it just doesn't work. I try to that's not how this works. You don't create your own currency. You don't pay taxes to yourself. This is not how that works. And yet we have this image, and they fight over the money and the finances, and they've created this where we're drones.
If you can talk about what I think is the biggest obstacle of them all, and it is frankly, the thing Republicans do is they can't get on their knees fast enough for the rich and powerful, which is why they're always pushing for tax cuts and deregulation and things like that. The problem, which I think for something like modern monetary theory, is actually a bigger issue with the Democrats, because the Democrats are much more into bureaucracy and into having organizations that are just so government dependent. Things like, when people talk about student debt, like, why is college so expensive? It's because there's a bureaucracy. You have
to feed their predatory friends. That's what this is.
You have to be able to have, if at a college that has 2,000 students and you've got a dozen vice presidents making $250,000 a year, where do you think that money's coming from? There's a reason why there's forever debt, if you will. I wish people would understand that. I would like you to touch on that, and then we'll get into Milton Friedman and Ayn Rand and people like that.
My God, Ayn Rand?
We have to. But if you could talk about the bureaucracy problem first, that would be great.
So, we create jobs, right? And what I want to peel this back before I go too far down the path you just laid. I think this is really important.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I want to peel it back just a skosh, okay? So you hear the word neoliberal a lot, okay? And neoliberalism is a very important term to understand and get right, not just use it as a pejorative, but actually understand it, okay? Neoliberalism is about a radical approach to privatization. It is an economic school that wants to privatize. It wants to eradicate the public space in pursuit of the private space. So when you think about, if the government doesn't spend money into the economy, where does that money come from? Businesses don't create money. If the government doesn't spend money, there's no money in the economy, right? So where does it come from? It comes from debt. It comes from bank loans. It comes from all these other Wall Street shadow bank, payday lenders, you name it. And so when they create loans at high interest rates, this is how Wall Street fattens itself. This is how all these other nefarious actors, these predatory jerks, the bloodsuckers of our economy, this is how they function. So when you look at the idea of giving college away for free, number one, what it does is, it doesn't mean that they won't be paying it. The government will just be making direct payments to whoever's providing the service. But what it does mean, though, is that if you're not desperate, if I'm not desperate, and if everybody else is not desperate, then we don't have to toe the line. We can make different decisions for our lives, right? And so they need us desperate to keep us in control. And even Alan Greenspan let it out a couple of times. This is all 100% about making sure people remain desperate. Go back to my Haitian slave thing. They wanted to keep them desperate. They wanted to keep them without hope. And by doing that to us, we stay malleable. We stay, there's no other way. We've got to vote for Hillary. There's no other way. We've got to do this. There's no other way. We've got to do it. And they keep you in this very zero-sum gain. There is no alternative mindset. By changing that around, by putting it into the public space and taking the burden off people and making so the government invests in each of us, what they do is they free us from the bond, or the bondage, if you will, of private debt. They free us of the bondage of being stuck, being scowled at when we use our food stamps for crab meat when, why are they getting crab meat? Oh, they got a nice car. Well, you know what? People with nice cars get laid off too. And this is the dog eat dog of the 99%. We always forget that labor is much bigger than just the poor guys. And that's why we are a huge block. If we focus on class struggle instead of this whole identity politics and stuff, we could really win the day. That doesn't mean we get rid of intersectionality, because there are real issues. Minorities are facing very real issues, and framing these discussions are very important to understand. Blacks, women, they haven't had power. So when you talk about the state providing these things, the state has failed them pretty miserably. So it's not hard to understand why they're skeptical. They've been failed by our government, by we the people. So it's important to frame these things in a way that allows people of differing backgrounds to come to the same conclusion, but it really must be about class and race. Now, back to your bureaucracy thing. We can fund all the bureaucracy we want. We don't have to save money. And this is one of the big things that you learn in MMT. We don't have to cut the F-35, though we should. We don't have to cut the F-35 to afford student debt relief. We can do both. The issue is, do we have the real resources? Well, we shouldn't be blowing real resources on a garbage plane like the F-35. We have more than enough bombs, more than enough planes. We need to start getting into diplomacy. So your point of bureaucracy, and they love their bureaucracy and so forth, that's job creation in the Democratic play. That's how they create jobs. That's how they get reelected. That's how they build their little soiree of, friends and donors and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's the story right there. I think it's really important to tie the neoliberal narrative into this so that you understand the reason why any of these things are even talked about is because we literally are being stripped to the bone so that Wall Street can own us.
And I think everything, the easiest way to see it, I think, is to point out things like how they just want to privatize things like education and take the money from the public sector and privatize. And the reason is that it boosts up their wealthy friends. I tell people it's like this nice big circle jerk that we're not invited to. And there's they just keeps feeding each other. They're just it's like you come out of this lobbying firm, you go into government, you go into this business, you feed your friends, they're predatory payday lenders, whatever, you all laugh about it. And it just keeps going. And we're all just watching this. I really feel like I'm sometimes I feel like I'm in the Truman Show. I really do.
Yes. And you know what, in a way you are, because we are the most propagandized nation in the world. We're worried about the KGB. We're worried about all these things. But in reality, if you just look at the way that we've heard history is told through the eyes of the victor, but it's also told through the eyes of the oligarchs. If you've read Howard Zinn, and
that should be required reading in high school.
Required reading
in high school. Yes.
Howard Zinn's, People's History of the United States is absolutely the only way to decolonize your mind and deprogram it. And you look back at history, I hear friends of mine talking about the American Revolution. That was a bourgeois thing. That was wealthy landowners that came to America trying to say, hey, we want to keep our stuff. We don't want to send it back to England. That wasn't the poors rising up and saying we want freedom. In fact, the poors were sent off to fight in the Mexican-American War. They were sent off all over the place, So if you don't have a kind of a class analysis and an understanding of how power works and these power dynamics, this is all going to blow your mind. Every bit of what we're talking about is going to seem like poppycock. But you've got a huge wealth of history there to look at. Look at the French Revolution, for crying out loud. I mean, all these moments through history come together. And if you don't get rid of them, you kind of look at them through the lens of today, you can clearly see how we are being absolutely propagandized into believing all manner of nonsense.
This is also why there is a very serious problem right now, as Jordan and I are personal friends. Censorship is a real thing. And the more this message gets out there, the harder, for those who may not know, the three most powerful people in all of media, Jack Dorsey, I forgot the person who's the CEO of Google, and of course, Mark Zuckerberg, were in front of
the trifecta, the axis of evil.
Yeah, and I guess they were in front of the House subcommittee of I don't remember which committee it was, but they're basically
they get to be in charge.
They're basically trying to suppress this type of message. And what's interesting, and this is a good segue back to Milton Friedman and Ayn Rand, they do not try to suppress that kind of message. So we've got a lot of these libertarians in this country, and listen, I'm very socially libertarian, but economic libertarianism is not feasible.
No, it's a joke.
I right now have my 20-year-old who has had to take the year off of college is going through his Ayn Rand phase right now. And so
we all had it.
Obviously I know. And I said that to him and he's like, by what? I'm like,
You'll
Whatever.
understand.
Yeah.
You'll understand.
After Atlas shrugs, you're going to drink from the fountain, then you're going to grow up and realize that you got to become a progressive.
Which is also why I don't think that the whole message of Reagan was really what stuck. I mean, obviously, I always try to tell people there's the Reagan in the first term and then there's the Reagan in the second term,
which was
where
really Bush.
everything went to hell. The truth of the matter is the tax cuts initially made sense, but when you do tax cuts, you're supposed to do it in a bear market. You're not supposed to do it in a bull market. You're supposed to raise taxes. You say there's this balancing effect that did not take shape, and we all know that Reagan cognitively was not there, especially in the second term. And there were these voices, if you will, these influencers of the time that became really big commodities. And of course, Milton Friedman and Ayn Rand are two particular individuals that really come to mind, where a lot of people subscribe to their philosophy, the sort of Gordon Gekko philosophy of the 1980s. And we've kind of been stuck in that for 4 decades now. And I don't know how we completely unwind, peel back that onion or just, do away with that economic philosophy. But there has to be a way to show them that what they're preaching is wrong, and how the new ideas, the progressive ideas, is really the way forward.
Yeah.
So remember my fight against the UBI. My fight against the UBI is largely, why are you going to put the onus on the person to make good decisions in a world that they have very little control in,
when they shouldn't have to be paying those things anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the thing is that Milton Friedman was the father of the UBI, basically. And his goal was to strip away the public space. They wanted to make the government so small that they could basically crush it. And that is an adorable dog. They wanted to make the government.
Hello, Lou.
No, I'm sorry. She gets needy. She'll just sit here for a minute.
I'm like so down with the dog stuff. I don't have one anymore and I miss it. So I'm living vicariously here. But if you think about it, the idea here is always pushing you to private sector solutions, right? Once you have cash, there's no need for money in the government. The government can do whatever it needs to do at will. So the money in the private sector is about you spending in the private sector. And so that means you're reliant on the private sector. And Milton Friedman believed the only thing wrong with capitalism was we needed more capitalism. So let's go ahead and give people a UBI and tell them to shut up. We'll strip away the public space. And this goes back to the Mont Pelerin Society trying to destroy the New Deal. And I mean, let's be fair, the New Deal wasn't great for everybody either. The New Deal saved capitalism, right? It didn't, there was a potential for a socialist revolution, and the New Deal was the great compromise. It wasn't like the great solution, it was the great compromise.
Right. He was saving capitalism, which is so funny. And then people think, oh, it was so socialist. I'm like, yeah, no, he was saving them from a guillotine. That's what he was doing.
Exactly it. And you think about it, right? Like here we are talking about, hey, we want a Green New Deal. Well, a Green New Deal is still largely saving capitalism once again. We're literally trying to bail capital out. Now, I'm telling you, I'm for a Green New Deal at the expense of us surviving climate change, right? I don't want to see you Floridians underwater, right? I'd like to see you, have nice lives.
So,
and stuff
yeah,
like that.
you know what? We might save this country, but I don't think we're saving.
I think Florida's a lost cause.
I think Florida's.
Florida's fine. Well, we're going to have to accept that.
So we're really, I mean, listen, we joke about it, but we're the limp penis of the United States. We could start.
Oh, for
it's
God's
just,
sake.
when you think about it, it's like,
and New Orleans is the rectum. It's true.
Yeah.
We're joking earlier. I probably shouldn't let the cat out of the bag, but we were talking earlier about doing part of my show as speed dating with Robespierre and bringing all these people on and who's going to get the guillotine next. And I think DeSantis probably needs it. He at least needs the floods to take him, to a different place.
I'm not going to give this guy. Look, we've got a handful of libertarians that are in the chat and they're throwing their 2 cents in about everything. All I can tell you is, if you need to understand what happened during, if you need to understand what happened during the New Deal era before the start of World War II, see, everyone is under this illusion, and this is what the conservative messaging, as you know, took off in the 1980s. The idea is that the Green New Deal was actually a failure.
He was born in '83.
Yeah,
he talks like he remembers Reagan. I
was born in '69, and I, for real, like. Just to be fair,
71. Okay. I'm 71.
All right, so you guys are both the youth of today. I'm the elder here, right? The gray beard, no.
No, you and I are Gen Xers.
That's true. I love it. Yes, but but think about this, right? So I voted for Ron Paul. I loved Ron Paul. I thought he was the god of all things before I knew MMT. And once I realized the dude didn't know his butt from his elbow when it came to economics, and I mean literally, the guy is like a zero when it comes to economics. The Austrian school is the biggest crock of kimchi of all time. And what the reality is that they don't understand state theory of money. They don't understand the fact that the state has the monopoly power of the dollar, right? Yeah. And so they try to make it, and this is something wrong with some of the public banking thinking too. I support public banks, let's be clear, but I don't support the mindset of the Ellen Brown school, which doesn't quite understand public debt, doesn't quite understand the role of the federal government. They still got a lot of anti-Semitism in that whole Rothschilds thing. I mean, just a lot of lunacy out there, right? I mean, let's drink the Kool-Aid together. But the reality is that Milton Friedman and libertarians have always believed in bootstraps, you know, the strong, the makers, the takers, you know. I mean, you go back to who's John Galt. I mean, look, guys, I was a Republican my entire life. Literally, I never voted for Democrat. I mean, I voted for Bush Sr. I voted for I'm Bob Dole. I voted for McCain. No. Did I vote for McCain? I think I did vote for McCain, actually.
That's a vote for Sarah Palin.
There you go. But I voted for Ron Paul, though, you know, and so and I voted for Jill Stein. And so ultimately, I get the whole libertarian
Russian assets, you.
But the thing is, a guy like me, I get the whole. I have a article out there that I talk how I came to MMT, and I talk a little bit about the libertarian background. I talk about a little bit of the right wing background. I mean, I literally listen to Rush every day of the week. I mean, literally, mega dittos. I can beat a liberal with one half of my brain tied behind my back. All these things. I knew the stuff inside and out. Now I'm left, I'm way over there now because I realized that most of the things that made me over here are bullshit. They were wrong. They literally didn't exist. They were propaganda. And I have been bitterly angry ever since I found out. And I've been on a one-man tear before. Now it's great to see so many people knowing about MMT. But back in the beginning, when I first came out, I mean, we real progressives, we had, Debbie, this insane progressive that would come on. We had, Arn Manconi would come on. We had Claudia Stauber back in the day. We had all these folks. I mean, tons of folks that were on our show, Tim Black and all kinds of stuff were going on. And ultimately, the way algorithms screwed us up, kind of took us out of the game a little bit. But I literally, when I came out and said taxes don't fund spending, people thought I was a libertarian. They thought I was fighting for libertarian rules so I could get rid of tax because I don't want to pay my taxes and stuff like that. They didn't understand. And literally, I mean, I got trolled, I got doxxed, I got all kinds of horrible things. I lost the job. I mean, all kinds of stuff over this. But I have never stopped. It is the absolute 150% truth. And it is literally the kind of thing that, if you're in that right-wing cult of this whole Ayn Randian, Milton Friedman world, MMT is the solution, because once you have that big epiphany, you're like, oh my God, how many connecting points do I have to disconnect now that I've learned that, taxes don't fund spending, that the government is the creator of the currency, all these different things. Once you get there, there's you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
How much of that do you think played a role in the mindset of the way people dealt with COVID when it really started to take off?
100%.
This is like, I don't want the government helping me with anything. I don't have to take anybody's help. You're dying from COVID. Yeah, but I don't need help.
No, and then there was that whole mindset of every man for himself, pull yourself up from your bootstraps, which, by the way, that saying is a farce. It's not meant to be a real thing. It's meant as that's not possible. And yet people say that like that's a thing. That's not a thing. You can't do that. It's physically impossible. That's the whole point of it.
Exactly. I think so much of this whole, anytime I hear somebody say they want small government and they want a government, they don't want government intervention and stuff like that. I'm sympathetic because I see the way government has been co-opted. It's been captured. A lot of our institutions have been captured. When Democrats say that they're going to come in and they're going to save something, they're going to do something, and then they give you garbage. They have their rotating villain to knock it down.
Yeah.
Right? When you see this happen over and over again, it's pretty easy to see why people think progressives are full of shit. It's pretty easy to see why they think Bernie's full of crap. It's easy to see why they think AOC's full of crap. And reality is that, right now, if Joe Manchin can single-handedly stop things from happening, you can pretty much tell it's bullshit. And you look back at Cory Booker when he stopped the pharmaceutical thing.
Oh,
Was that his turn to be the rotating idiot? Yes, it was. And so this keeps happening. And so it's real easy to say, you know what? I've had enough. I'm not going to buy it this time. You can't sell me another lie. You're rejecting. It's like being taken into the Matrix and you're watching the girl in the red dress and you're eating the steak. You know it ain't steak, but damn it, you want to do it anyway because your mind says it is.
I
Ignorance
feel
is
like I'm in the
bliss.
Matrix, but it's very, very difficult. And I think that, you know, I always talk about people being bridges and connecting different groups of people and bringing them on board to ideas that they might not otherwise be exposed to. And I feel like in some sort of, you know, accidental, reluctant way, I feel like I'm in a position to do that. So, you know, that's, you know, what we're trying to do and get people who wouldn't otherwise be paying attention to politics or paying attention to economics to understand that they've been being lied to basically forever.
Right.
I say this all the time, and even though it's changing, if you could talk about how powerful the corporate media still is in terms of driving the narrative, doing what I don't think people really understand how, you know, like Alex AOC, you know, she's the most beautiful girl at the ball right now, but she was basically given a warning the second she pulled that stunt in Pelosi's office, and was like, this is your one warning. You do this again, and we will literally make you an outcast in this city, and we will have every news outlet coming after you with reckless abandon. You will never get anything done here, blah, 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 blah. I think the importance of people really understanding how powerful the corporate messaging is in this country. And I have an idea of how we can combat that, but I'd love for you to share your thoughts on that.
No, absolutely. You know, as part of the quote unquote alternative media world, you know, I do a podcast. I used to do a lot more video. I'm going to start back to video here very soon. But the idea of breaking through algorithms and fighting each please share our stuff, please share our stuff, please share our stuff. And you're begging people, please, like your little tiny Tim, please pour some porridge, please share my content, right? Please donate. Oh, yeah, there you go. Thank you. I mean, the idea here is that, you know, we're out there begging, and people just like, they're giving you the Heisman, they're giving you the stiff arm when you try and get them to share. You know what I mean? It's like, come on now. But that's it. That's how we get out there, right? Corporate media doesn't have to do that. You sit down on your couch after you've been worked to the bone, you plop down, your kids are driving you nuts, your wife or your husband's yelling at you, scowling at you because they're pissed off too, and then you click on the boob tube, and sure enough, there's Rachel Maddow telling you Russia, 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 right? And then you've got Robert Reich going Russia, 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 and you flip the stage and you say, Russia, Russia, Russia. And
it must be Russia.
It must be Russia. Exactly. So you lose the ability to pull that back. If you remember, and it's hard to get that far back, but if you remember when Trump started, they had already tried to impeach him before he was even elected. They were already ready to impeach Donald Trump. Okay. I can't stand the guy. Let me be crystal clear. I hate him. Right. But it's humorous. I mean, it's like, you didn't even have a real you had so many real opportunities.
Don't do it. Not now.
They had no reason to
Dude,
come
you're
after
so good at that.
They had no listen. They totally had no reason to come after me. They never gave me an opportunity to be a great president, and they were really, really terrible people. And it's totally fake news. It's incredibly fake news. And you know what we're going to do? You want to know what we're going to do? We're going to start our own network, and it's going to be great. It's going to be the greatest. It's going to be incredible. I haven't thought of a name yet, but I'm thinking Trump TV. What do you guys think? Good name?
Go.
Tremendous name?
All right.
Really
Stop.
good? Oh, by the way, just so these people understand, MMT would not be good for me. It wouldn't be good for me. I'm successfully able to get people to do work for me and not even pay them. How would I get away with that if we had an MMT? I totally wouldn't be able to do that anymore. It'd be really terrible. Okay. Nice to see you, Jen.
Okay. Can you go, please?
You know how I knew that wasn't Donald Trump? The only thing that gave it away is he's got regular size hands. Otherwise, I thought it was DJ. I thought it was him, man.
I got a couple of good ones, but the truth is, the whole point of that was divide and conquer.
Yeah.
Yes, Trump was not capable of being president of the United States, leader of the free world, but they didn't want to get that. He was so much of a wild card that he may have done something as crazy as give everybody health care, or this MMT.
And yet,
sounds like a great
they
idea.
preferred him to Bernie.
Oh, 1,000%.
That was the clear choice.
We're gonna potentially have the writers of the book Looky come on, and they admit in the book that suburbanite Democrats would have been okay with Trump getting a second term if Bernie was the nominee. And it just goes to show you how all of this is a class war. Yeah. That's all this has ever been.
We're socialists.
And when people look at the neighbor who's got the BMW, it's, well, now I got to get a Mercedes. I can't have this. I can't be driving a Honda. Not good enough.
And I think really the bigger issue is what we were saying before, the I got me mine. Now you have to get yours. This is something we see down here with our elderly community and a lot of people that already have Medicare. There's this attitude of, I had to wait to get Medicare. I got Medicare. Mine's good. Why should you get it now? I had to wait until I was, and it's the same thing with student loans.
There is no question that with the boomer generation, they're very transparent to their credit, where they basically say, I put in the work. Now you got to do the same as me. I don't give a damn how many years you have to wait. I did the work, and now I'm going to reap my benefits, and you can sit around for 30 years without having any.
Yeah.
That's basically it.
It kills me is I'm a Deadhead. I love the Grateful Dead.
Yay!
I got like 70 million Dead shirts. I'm always bumming around. I got my dad hat on, so I look like freaking Castro.
I went to Boulder. I went to see you Boulder.
That's very interesting how you could be a Deadhead like Bill Walton, and yet somehow you found yourself falling in love with Ronald Reagan.
Deadheads are very
I wasn't then. I was a Slayer fan.
He's my age.
There you go.
He's my age. So when he got into the Dead was after Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, I sat there. I remember going to see the Dead in '93 at RFK, and they had a video around the bowl of RFK of kids doing Ring Around the Rosies, and I was sober as a judge, and I'm like, oh wow, I'm just like, it is the best thing I ever seen. And I love the Dead, but the point is that when you see pictures of Woodstock and you see these things, you realize, holy crap, these guys got it right. And then you look and you're like, you just voted for Hillary Clinton. What the hell's wrong with you? Wait, you voted for Biden? You didn't vote for Bernie? What is wrong with you? And they skew conservative. And I guess I understand to a degree, because at that point in time, you're looking at, my retirement fund. How do I survive once I'm not working anymore? And because we are in a capitalist environment where everybody's competing with each other, they're looking down their nose at you. And I get it, because that's the rules of capitalism. You know what I mean? It's not like they chose, but they could have done something different. You know what I mean? And so part of me regrets that, because you look at how beautiful the 60s were, beautiful in terms of people being enlightened, people taking chances, people thinking differently. And it, somehow or another, they became like a soccer van people. It's like, what happened? Where'd you guys go? Where's Joan Baez? Oh, she's voting for Hillary too. What the heck?
Wait. Is that a thing? Did that really happen?
Yes. I mean, this is the thing, right? You look back and honest to goodness, the propaganda is real. The bourgeoisie in this country is real. I mean, this is we all are an embarrassed millionaire waiting to happen. Yeah. And so with that dream, the American fraud that we believe in, people literally think, hey, I work my butt off for my little teeny pension. You better work your butt off too, because it's not fair. I had to work my butt off. They're punching down, they're punching sideways instead of punching up the people that made it that way to begin with.
Okay, Steve,
but he's talking about it in terms of socioeconomically.
Yes, but Steve is the first person besides you who I've heard use the term punching sideways.
I used it last week for content creators that spend more time criticizing other content creators. And it's like, we're all in the same sandbox. You're not helping anything. So I call that punching sideways.
What I also think is important, and this is a very important topic to talk about, because I think the hardest thing about getting across the message, whether you support UBI, whether you support a federal jobs guarantee, modern monetary theory, if you support Medicare for all, if you support a Green New Deal, if you support getting us out of these foreign wars, I don't think people really understand how powerful corporate messaging is. And it has to come to a point where the only way this is ever going to change is if independent media puts their egos aside and finds a way to come together. When that happens, then we will be able to compete. Until that happens, when everyone's looking to step on everybody else's neck and say, well, now I'm the top show on YouTube.
Yeah.
Listen, I say this all the time. You know, Jimmy has an amazing platform, but he has no concept whatsoever of how to build bridges. I think he wants to, but he just doesn't really know how to do it. And I wish he would, because there's so many of these independent content creators who kind of look at that same thing of, well, you know, I made it and, you know, there you go. But to Kyle Kalinski's credit, he made a great video the other day about how these channels are getting horrifically suppressed.
Yeah.
If we were to band together, we would be able to compete with the algorithm, because people would be using hashtags to be able to share. Your podcast needs to be shared. Jordan's podcast needs to be shared.
Wait, let's talk about that for a second. So I know that our friend Savage Joy is working over there with you now. Is that?
So Savage Joy left to go off onto Roar Media, I think is what it's called. She lives right down the street from me, ironically, out here in Pennsylvania. But she was part of RP for years, and you know, she wanted to strike it out on her own and try something new, and so she went off and did her own thing. We've been around since the Harrisburg March for Bernie back in 2016. I think it was the summertime about 2016, right before the DNC. And from that point on, she came on board and she did all of our candidate interviews for years. And you know, we dubbed her Savage Joy, and that became her moniker. You know, good for her. She's written that Yaz Queen book with Pat Cote. She's doing good things, and you know, she's got some problems with her eyes right now, and so I'm pulling for her there. I mean, she's definitely learning a new way of life through the lens of being, you know, visually impaired. So hats off to her for pressing through it.
She is a lovely, lovely lady.
Yeah.
One of the first people who gave Jen a platform when she decided to run for Congress, and is somebody who
we got ghosted by a lot of the progressives.
No, I mean, Joy introduced Jen to Mike Figueredo of the Humanist Report.
Yeah.
And that's really when it kind of took
shares
off.
the love. Joy pays it forward.
Yeah, no, she's great. And if anybody saw, you know, the Medicare for All forum that they did, you know, a few months ago, I mean, her story is heartbreaking. It really is. And, you know, that's why, you know, we do what we do, because we know that the future rests in our ideas. If that was not the case, they wouldn't be trying so hard to suppress our message. And that's why we have to come together and figure out ways. And we have to cross network with each other and spread the message, because that's how it's going to happen. Is there anything you'd like to share before we wrap? Any projects that you're working on right now?
Promote.
Where to find you and all that good stuff.
Yeah. So our website is realprogressives.org. So we're a 501c3 on the one side for education, and we are a 501c4 for activism. That's called Real Progress in Action, which you rightfully.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So, but yes, I'm the founder of both. Ironically, but the only reason why we had to split them was because we really are trying to become a think tank for everyone, so that we can take these things and be the people's think tank. If you think about it, most people they're not going to listen to a regular think tank because they're all lofty and academic. We need Jane and Joe Q public to be able to understand this stuff. So that's our role. As far as things that you can find me on, my podcast is called Macro and Cheese.
I love that. I love that. So
it's a labor of love. I really enjoy doing it, but we also have two other ones that are really important. In particular, the New Untouchables, the Pecora Files. We are working with real whistleblowers. When you were talking about the Reagan era, we worked with Bill Black, who brought down the Keating Five. He was part of that group that brought down the savings and loan crisis and went after 30,000 referrals for arrest. I mean, this is a guy who's ready to jail bankers. And so we got him out there. We've got Patrick Lovell and Eric Vaughn, who are the producers and co-producers of this docuseries called The Con. And this is a series about the great financial crisis, elite control fraud, and how to get a real new Pecora hearing like they did back during the Great Depression when the stock market crashed. They brought Ferdinand Pecora, who was ironically a Republican, to go ahead and tackle all the fraud. So we've got that one. Please check that out. And also a new one coming up here called The S Word. And it's all about struggle and socialism. And it's a bunch of us yucks that are just trying to figure it out. We're trying to get rid of the secret handshake. We're trying to get rid of the code words. We're trying to go in there as regular people so that the people that are fearful of that word can watch us go through our process, learning this stuff and not be scared. We need to get people to stop allowing the propaganda to affect how they see things. And so those are 3 big initiatives that we do. We also have MMT Mondays. Every week, our guy, Caleb Mood, puts out MMT Mondays. And we got a lot of good stuff coming in. I'm going to be coming out soon with my own little show called The Rogue Scholar. So look for more stuff coming.
Excellent.
Who would have thought talking about economics could be so much fun?
I never would have thought I'd ever
so
get to talk
powerful.
to you at all. Like 5 years
Well,
ago.
have you on my show, for goodness sake? You're next. You're
Steve,
next.
please connect with John. We got to get Jen on your show. So let's
yeah,
trade off.
where do you live, by the way? Where are you?
I'm about 20 minutes outside of Harrisburg. I'm in York.
So you're in the countryside.
Yeah, I'm right by Ski Round Top. So
you're by so he's not that far from where Tim Pool is. Like there's that section. Tim Pool's in Western Maryland, right by the border of West Virginia.
It's really close to that. Yeah, it's really close.
I know that area pretty
That's
well.
beautiful there, though.
Yes.
So you live like kind of rural.
Very, very rural. I'm from DC, ironically. My entire life, I graduated from Maryland. I moved out here years ago and haven't been able to leave since.
No, that's so nice.
It is.
You know what? When you can get away from the hustle and bustle, the
Yeah.
truth of the matter is, for all the issues we have in this country, there's a lot of places you can live that are not that expensive because there's not a lot of people there.
Well, that's the thing. There's just too many people here.
Yeah.
There's just too many people.
And that's
There's
the
just
thing,
too many people.
and again, this all gets back to the whole idea of MMT. It's inflation. It's inflationary living in South Florida. And why is that? Because there's too many people here and there are limited resources. So when that happens, cost of living goes way through the roof.
We have issues.
Steve, you were fantastic.
Thank you so much.
We hope you'll come back. And of course, let's get Jen on your show. And
He's always promoting.
of course, you got to, because we're all in this together, baby.
Thanks, Steve.
Absolutely. Thank you guys very much. It was great.
You're very welcome. Take care, buddy.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah, that is as informative as
he's so cute to me.
Yeah, no, he's
so
good,
cute.
man.
Like the whole salt and pepper thing got going on there. He's just so cute.
Hey,
I'm sorry, I've always thought that.
Just
saying.
Steve's gonna get a little heart
I'm just saying.
Jen's got her pigtails
I'm
going
just
on
got
and
my
everything.
pigtails going. I'm just saying he's really cute. That's all I'm saying.
So before you guys go, we
Wait.
got a lot of you watching. We do have one more segment that we do have to tackle. It is News and Amuse. For those of you who
which we
haven't watched the
normally
show
do in the
before.
beginning, but we had 2
Yes.
guests today.
Yes.
So we're gonna
Hang
you
on,
want to do
this
it,
one.
but you have to scroll
So what
to the
we wanna-
next. No. All
Okay.
you have to do is go into it,
Right.
and now scroll the little button.
No, we don't need
No,
this.
scroll the little button.
I'm going to let Jen handle this. I like that. That was great. Okay, you guys got to see this. This is really good.
I'm gonna this is my new thing. Okay, like I got to add stuff for you.
All
right. So I'm gonna always put a little something in there now that I'm doing the graphics.
So again, we
News
try
and
to
Amuse, March 25th.
we try to tackle at least one topic that's like really important. But now,
love it, don't
Jen.
you?
But listen, Jen is the one who designs these lovely graphics. Now,
I'm the new
Gotta
graphics
kudos to her for
person.
the job that she's doing.
Although I
mean,
will say this, our video production intern Chloe did our News and Amuse logo. I just started doing this with the article.
I'm gonna pay you your tribute for that. Farming Ganja. Yes, it absolutely was amazing.
Farming Ganja.
Yes. So, for those of you who don't know, Senator Hyde Smith in Mississippi decided to let her feelings be known about what's going on. Because for those of you who know, the Georgia GOP did in fact pass their voter suppression bill today, and they were having a discussion about voter suppression laws and whatnot, and what type of restrictions will be
We're talking
implemented.
about the church lady here.
So Miss Church Lady in Mississippi decided to say in front of the Senate committee that people should not be voting on Sundays because it's an affront to God.
It'll offend God.
That's nice. Well, for those of you who know what Souls to the Polls is a tradition in the Black community that dates back to the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And it is very common practice that on Sunday after church, the Black community goes to the polls
And they
and
vote.
vote. And so the only reason why Senator Hyde Smith would make a statement to the effect of it's an affront to God and I don't want you voting on Sunday, it's because the people who will be voting on Sunday will not be voting for her party. So naturally, they want to make it as difficult as possible in terms of being able to vote. And so, of course, the Georgia GOP passed a bill today that restricts voting access by not allowing you to vote by mail and put it in a drop box. Isn't that wonderful? Everyone has to have a voter ID. I'm not as against something like that, but it depends on to the extent of what type of ID we're talking about. Because in most instances, they want you to have a driver's license, and not everybody has one. And then finally, and this is the most egregious part of the bill, is you are not allowed to supply food to people waiting online to vote if they're there for a long period of time.
Starve the people.
What is this?
Starve the people.
How do you
wait?
How
did we get to that from not voting on Sunday because it'll offend God?
Because that's what was put in the bill, and it's like they're trying to defend what
voter suppression.
The old GOP, the McConnell, GOP is trying every which way to hang on to power, and the only way they can at this point is to stop people from voting. That's it. There's no other way, because they have not evolved, and they are so thoroughly corrupted by corporate money that they cannot convince people anymore that they're working for them, because they're not. You're always going to have people that are going to vote for them, but not enough where they could actually affect change, which is why if Trump doesn't run in 2024...
Okay, you're getting so way off topic, and I'd rather you not.
Okay, so I'm not going to get off topic.
No, can we
Jen's
seriously? No, I have to, because you're like pontificating. Okay, so onward.
Yes. So the U.S. COVID response could have saved... I think they estimate about 200,000 lives.
It actually says it there.
300... Yes. So
you can read it.
U.S. fatalities could have stayed under 300,000. So what that means is 250,000 people could have survived COVID if we had a universal healthcare system in this country.
That's not what that was. No, what we're talking about here is that they spent on if they had spent on programs such as unemployment compensation and public health and those things.
If we had an emergency UBI where people would have been able to stay home.
Had they adopted widespread masks, social distancing, and testing protocols while awaiting the vaccine.
And never forget the worst
fumbled from the get-go.
The worst thing that happened in the Trump, there was a lot of bad things that happened in the Trump administration, but I think the most nefarious of them all was, if you remember, there was a deal, I think in April or May of last year, where the U.S. Postal Service was going to provide, I think, 5 masks per person.
Yeah, and he shut that down.
And they shut it down.
Yeah.
And think about how many people could probably lost their lives because they didn't have basic protections.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. It was just bungled from the get-go.
How is Louis DeJoy still the head of the U.S. Postal Service?
I don't even.
Joe, you're going to do your job?
Well, they want to completely defund the Postal Service so that they can have all their private friends making all their money from doing something that should be a public service.
It's all about, how do we keep the people down?
Austerity.
But there is an opportunity coming up where we could turn it around. And our friend...
Okay, all right. You want to do this? All right. Wait, are you going to Alabama, Bernie?
I just want to let everybody know that tomorrow I am going to be in Alabama with the workers of Amazon in Bessemer. And they are planning to form a union. My understanding is that a lot of the young kids are not entirely sure if they should form a union. I know that they happen to like me a lot. So I'm going to talk to them and let them know that having a union gives you great bargaining power. And if you have great bargaining power, you could get better health care, you could get better pay, you could get better time off, and you could stick it to that son of a gun. I can't curse. Stick it to that son of a gun, Jeff Bezos.
I was going to ask you, what do you think of my graphic?
I think your graphic is lovely. It's really, really nice. I really appreciate you. You make me look good with a halo.
You have the halo.
I have a halo. And I must say that Jeff Bezos, he definitely reminds me of a very devilish type of person.
Oh, yes. So he is Dr. Evil.
I am not going to support such a terrible, terrible guy. We are going to go down there and we are going to convince the people that it is time to have a big union movement in this country.
Yeah, so everybody needs to know this is going on. So right now, the workers at Amazon in Bessemer, Alabama, are voting on whether or not to unionize that facility. And this is a huge deal. This will be one of the biggest steps forward in labor since before Reagan.
They are going to vote on Monday. I got to make sure that everyone understands that all of the threats that they are throwing at them, it is not going to work. They have to work together. And if they do, they form a union, and then a lot of people in Amazon all around the country are going to work together to do their own union. They're going to make their own union. It's going to happen. I know it. It's definitely going to happen. And I am confident that this movement towards a progressive future is not entirely lost.
Yes.
I know I'm not fighting as hard as people would like me to. With that said,
We are going to do what we have to do, one step at a time. We form the union in Bessemer, and then it takes off.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad you're going down there. All right. So that's about Bernie and Bezos.
And then the final, very important that people understand. And I know that there are those, look, Steve Grumbine, great guest, amazing guest, really believes in MMT, and we do too. But he's not a big fan of UBI. I beg to differ because we have a story here out of Evanston, Illinois, where this is the first U.S. city that is going to pay reparations to Black residents. Essentially, they are going to be getting a UBI. And I believe that there's a community, for those of you in the chat, I believe that there is a community in, I want to say it's like Fresno, California, that's been experimenting as well with UBI, and it's been going very well. So
well, I mean, now you're sort of crossing over from, I mean, yes, it's a type of UBI, but it's a much broader issue that talk about that they're recognizing this through reparations. I think
100%.
that's the key thing here. It isn't so much that it's a UBI, you're kind of crossing issues. To me, the bigger issue is that they're acknowledging the need for reparations. Now, I've always, talked about this over the past few years this is, to me, we cannot go forward as a collective without recognizing the harm that we've done and repairing that as best we can. So hence reparations. And I think that it's sort of like to go forward without addressing that. And we could talk about the ways to address that. And I don't know that I feel that the cash payment is necessarily the best answer.
No,
exactly.
I think that investment in the community is the absolute best way to do it.
But here is what I do know, that decision needs to be made by Black people.
Yeah.
And what I know is that it is our white people's job to educate ourselves as to what our problems are that have led us to where we are. It's not a Black person's job to explain that to us, but I do believe it's within the purview of the Black community to determine what reparations look like and the best way to do that from going forward. We can't go back, so we got to go forward. So,
that's right. And that is a great saying.
I think it's very important.
That's a great saying from Andrew Yang, which is humanity forward. And that's what we have to do. And I like the idea of the term Florida forward. I think that sounds pretty sharp. So there's a lot of things that we can be doing here. But we need to repair what we've done.
Yes. And we're still, unfortunately, in Florida, we're still continuing to kick down here. So it's hard to even wrap our head around the idea of reparations. So the fact that there's another municipality in our same country that's starting to recognize the need to repair, and yet here we're still kicking down, it's just sad to me.
I think, well, and thank you, Blackberry. I'm not familiar with Sandy or Derek, but definitely we will look into that. We are looking to have.
Is John on here?
Yeah.
Okay, John, will
if you
you
could look them up?
Yeah, look that up.
And obviously, we're looking to get Marianne Williamson to come on the podcast.
Marianne Williamson's policy about reparations was, I thought, the most thorough, very well. Like I really liked her concept. It's the same idea of what I'm talking about. I think she set it up it would be a council of 30 people that would be in the Black community and ranging and non-political. Like, this is not a partisan thing. This isn't people of Congress thing. This is right. a community leader and academic leader thing, and come up with the plan based on how to use a very good chunk of money as an endowment for the Black community. And that's essentially what it needs to be. It needs to be like an endowment, and that could come in different forms.
Well, I always say that, when the banks invest in a community, they're not investing in the communities that desperately need the most help.
No, they're feeding their fat friends.
And that is the ultimate form of reparations, is putting the bank power, local community bank power, in the areas that need it the most. Yeah. And that is not something we're seeing right now.
No.
And we're going to keep harping on the fact that when you're down, it's very easy to stay down. We were building a community garden in one of the more plighted areas in South Broward, and the person who owned the property decided to cash in.
And there's something very shifty going on with the whole thing. There's something I looked at. There's something very shifty. But the point is that basically powers that be, I think, recognized that we were having progress that could possibly interfere with their plans for gentrifying that area.
Right.
And they weren't going to have it. And so somebody strong-armed somebody into something, and it isn't even just about the money. Something is going on there, and they're
is
pulling
something-
the garden out from under us to gentrify that neighborhood.
And this is something that goes on all over the United States. This is not an isolated incident. Land developer money is one of the biggest, if not the biggest issue we have in Tallahassee, and that we have, you know, just throughout the state, quite frankly, in local municipalities. So there's a lot of work to be done. But if we start building a cohesive unit together and not just looking at this from the perspective of, you know, like John said earlier, drama is profitable.
Well, and not only is drama profitable, but even on YouTube, like what we were talking about before, is the drama is what gets the clicks. Things like information, education, those things don't get clicks. What gets clicks is drama. And so
we're not into that.
No.
And if we do want to finish, I think this is a great time. The last thing before we go off is the people that were coming after you, the people that were basically saying that you were a sellout.
You're going to have to be way more specific.
When we did the Assange telethon, this is the person who hosted the Assange telethon and got tens of thousands of people to call their representatives. But because out of 5.5 hours, there was a 20-second segment where Jen addressed her friend, Nina Turner, that it may not be in her best interest at this moment, when the establishment is looking for any reason to knock her off her perch, to not talk about Julian Assange in a very thorough way. I stand by
that statement. I stand by that statement from a political standpoint. I'm not saying she would not say that she supports him if asked. I just don't think that's something you should be waving around a few months before an election. You know, it is very.
And there's other people who are running for tons of people that we support, but Nina Turner is in a class all by herself.
We need her. We need her very badly. We need her to win.
And I don't have to spell it out. If you can't see that she is the heir apparent to Bernie's movement, then I don't know what you're looking at or why you think that it's good for her to take unnecessary risks right now. We are not in a position for her, especially her, to die on the hill of trying to get Julian Assange freed. There are a lot of other people out there that are involved that can help with that.
And another thing I want to point out is that a lot of the hate that I was getting, which is the people punching sideways, it's really a matter of stepped on toes, burnt egos, and just people feeling like they have this proprietary ownership about the Julian Assange thing because they've been on the ground fighting and all that. And which, by the way, I am so thankful that people are doing that. Like I'm very, very thankful. But I don't see how one thing has to do with another. So because someone's doing that, I'm some sellout because I didn't include them in my life. It's like, what are we in junior high school?
We don't have
like junior high school.
We don't have time for this.
No, and that's the thing with the left. They're so busy eating their own. So they actually spent more time talking crap about me with their little hurt feelings about who I didn't include in my little party. Look, I never held out my panel forum to be the experts on Julian Assange. I held it out as to be a telethon to promote people to call the Department of Justice to free Assange. Now, are we going to restream that tomorrow?
I think we are.
I think that was like our plan,
yeah,
John, if you can comment on that.
Yeah, we're almost done. You know, John, tip of the hat as always for the phenomenal work that he does.
Our producer, he's the man.
I basically devoted my entire Sunday, the day after the live stream, to watch the whole thing again, get the clips. But John is the one who's doing the hard work. He's the one who's editing everything. I think it was a phenomenal telethon.
What's Chloe working on?
Chloe is probably working on the graphics, I believe, putting that
so we
together.
also have a really good video production intern.
We've got a great
Chloe.
team building, and needless to say, it's piecemeal. We're trying to do everything we can. If this channel takes off, if we get it, listen, for those of you watching, if you'd like to be a Patreon, I'm going to put it in right now. The super chats are nice.
It's always in our description, isn't it?
I think
John puts a link to Patreon in our description.
Maybe there's a banner, but we need people to be able to see it across the across the screen.
We are in the process of updating our webpage, which will hopefully then be a good place to direct people for good resources.
Correct. Yeah, thanks
We're
for
working
mentioning
on
about
it.
that.
We're working on it.
Patreon.com/generational
But yeah,
change.
we're just trying to be, we're really trying to be part of the solution. So when other content creators start talking crap about me and with their, holier than thou kind of nonsense, it's like, I don't have time for this, people. I don't have time for this. Why don't you go out and why you talk about punching up, but then you're so quick to criticize somebody else for doing something? Like I owed somebody something. I don't owe anybody anything other than unless your name is Reese or Graham Perlman, I owe you nothing.
Not even me?
So no, I owe you nothing.
All right, I tried.
I'm telling you, the only two people, Reese and Graham Perlman, if you are not them, I owe you nothing. And so when people talk about me like, how could she have this without, are you kidding me? Grow up.
You guys got to grow up.
Grow
Like,
up.
there's no point to this.
Oh
This
my
is not going
God.
to solve any problems.
It's so ridiculous.
And you know what? There's a reason why you get along so well with somebody like Vosh.
I love
because Vosh has no time for this.
No. And you know
He's-
what? It's the thing is that anybody who is into the petty nonsense, I don't have time for it.
No.
Stay in your lane, appreciate what other people do, whatever. But
And we're trying to work with everybody.
well, I really am. Like, that's the thing. I'm not, it's like there was nothing exclusionary. We really just put it together and wanted it to be a fun thing. And it was a fun thing. It was great. And so hopefully we will be re-streaming that tomorrow.
Yes. And again, you're never
Catch it. Lots of good panels.
Yeah, and you're never going to please everybody.
No.
That is never going to happen. You can't do that. But you can't look at it as you're being, slighted. There's people who have slighted Jen, but you know what? If they extended the olive branch and said, yeah, let's work together. We'll work with them.
There are certain people I won't work with.
That's
actually,
true.
But not because they ghosted me, but because I question their integrity and their morals.
That's true. But that is a very, very small.
Yes, that's a very small group of one person.
Yeah. We're not going to name that person.
No, but it isn't just for somebody ghosting me. I'm over that. It's not about me.
Because there are nefarious actors in the ranks.
Yeah.
There's no question that is true. There's not a lot of them, but they are there. But for the most part, people are just trying to make it. And it is very hard when we are literally dealing with big tech censorship on steroids. They want to bring us down and they don't want us to succeed. But why is that? Because our message is resonating. And as long as our message resonates, they're going to do everything in their power to stop it from happening.
Who do we have coming on Monday?
We don't have anyone confirmed just
Okay, we're
yet.
still working on Monday, but
just working on Monday.
But we are gonna we are working toward labor and Florida focused segments on Monday. So
for those of you, please go check out the channel. You're gonna love our content. You're gonna hear me do all kinds of crazy
loves
voices.
his little impersonations.
Yeah. Well, I think I do an okay
you
job.
Did
I
an
did
okay
all.
job.
I did the top 3 tonight.
You did your top 3.
Go.
It's all good.
I think this is a great show. I really do. I think
you
we really
love
did
it
a
when
great
you
job.
get in.
We
your
have
mask.
as Crystal and Soccer like to say every day, we have an amazing show for you.
We have
rather than say it at the beginning, we say it at the end because I really think we had an amazing show tonight.
I think it was good. I mean, well, first of all, I always knew that Steve was somebody that I would totally just gel. Like he's just
a really regular guy who just happens to have a really
cool,
strong.
And now now it totally all makes sense to me because he's Deadhead. So he and I probably crossed paths at shows.
The Deadheads are like they're a very connected group.
But the thing is, they're like the chillest, coolest people. Like you don't have the guys that are going into places and gunning people down, not Deadheads.
No. Definitely not.
Definitely not Deadhead.
Definitely, they definitely ain't smoking the reefer.
No,
for sure.
No, they're not cannabis users.
Maybe if they were smoking the reefer,
I would like to say that. I would like to put that out.
Let's legalize cannabis because I guarantee you a lot of the violent crime would definitely dissipate. It certainly would help.
Well, I would love to, point that out. And somebody else that I see, Facebook friends pointed out that it's never women. Women have mental health issues and women have access to firearms.
All right. So
why is that?
All right. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. This is my mother and she is a Deadhead as well. So for those of you in that community, it's a very pleasant community and one that very much welcomes the cannabis with open arms.
Well,
so a lot of that violence will not exist if that was ever going on.
Yeah, cannabis users are a very chill bunch of people. The cannabis user doesn't go home and beat the crap out of his wife. No, that's not a thing that happens.
The alcohol abuse.
He goes home and grabs a bag of Doritos and forgets he has a wife, but he certainly doesn't abuse his wife.
Yeah, you're right. Well, that said, there's no reason that it shouldn't be legal. It's absolutely insane at this point.
And the fact that our current president's administration just fired a whole bunch of people for cannabis use after telling them that it would not be held against them, and the fact that it was done previously and legally.
Oh yeah.
I'm just
dumbfounded. But
I
then again,
am.
We're
I'm
gonna
disgusted.
evolve past this, guys. It's gonna happen. It's just a question of time. But like I said, it is so essential for us to check our egos at the door.
I feel very defensive of my Cannabis tribe.
Yeah, well, like I said, if we check our egos at the door and we work together in concert to lift each other up, we will beat corporate messaging and we will get to that future that we're so desperately.
So stay tuned. What do we? Let me check the calendar and see what's going on next week. But stay tuned for potentially a big push against corporate media and censorship.
And for those of you who are local, we have a very big event coming up on April the 6th. We are doing a Taco Tuesday.
Trash and Taco Tuesday with GenCore. So for those of you in Broward, in Dade, even Palm Beach County, if you'd like to join us. We are doing, so 90-minute beach cleanup followed by tacos because it's Tuesday.
Yes.
Taco Tuesday.
Who could say no to that?
Yeah.
Remember, you guys are funding Taco Tuesday. Those of you who contribute to the
Yes,
channel.
it's very helpful. It does. That's what it goes to doing volunteer events. That's basically anything that goes towards GenCore is going towards community events. Something I just started working on, which I haven't even told you about, is I want to start putting together like gear bags for the homeless. I want to mirror what Lincoln is doing down at the, remember we had him on the show and they're doing the bags for the homeless. You're looking like you have no idea what I'm talking about.
No, Lincoln Road and down in Miami.
I want us to be doing that up here. And so I started figuring out, so that's going to be a new GenCore project, is putting together care packages, care bags. They call them blessing bags. They call them different things, but stuff for our homeless friends. So when you donate to us, that's the kind of stuff that I use it for.
Thank you all for tuning in tonight. Remember to subscribe on YouTube, hit the like button, share the video, hashtag MMT, hashtag generational change. We're all in this together, my friends, and we will see you real soon. Remember, we're going to be posting not just replaying the live stream, but we are also going to be posting the individual hourly panels and clips to go along with them. And we hope you'll check it out, and we appreciate your support. Have a great night.